Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a unique and rather intense piece of source material.
Yeah.
It describes a journey many might find hard to imagine.
Yeah.
It sort of lays out this progression of experiences for someone who believes they are a, quote, targeted individual.
Right. And what's really compelling here, I think, is how this document frames that experience. It outlines a structured, almost systematic journey,
Uh-huh.
for individuals facing what it calls electronic harassment and gang stalking. It's a very specific narrative it's putting forward.
Absolutely. So our mission really for this deep dive is to explore these distinct phases just as they're laid out in your source material.
Mhm.
We're aiming to understand the specific story being told here and what it implies, in its own context. It's about offering you a kind of direct shortcut to grasping its complex framework.
Mhm.
And just to be clear, when this source mentions electronic harassment, it's talking about, well, technology used for unwanted influence. And gang stalking, as presented here, is described as this coordinated, covert harassment by like multiple people or groups. We're really just analyzing this source's specific take on these claims.
Which raises a really important question for us, doesn't it? How does our understanding change when we're faced with phenomena that, well, challenge the usual explanations?
Yeah.
So we're here to impartially break down the descriptions and stages from this particular material, just focusing on the insights it offers into this viewpoint, without necessarily endorsing the claims, but just understanding what it actually says.
Right. And you'll discover why this source insists that understanding its framework is crucial, even if you're not what it terms a victim. And you'll hear how it describes a system apparently designed to inflict what it calls massive damage.
Massive damage is strong phrasing.
It is. So the source starts its narrative by describing what it calls the non-victim phase. Most people, it seems to suggest, start here, just, living their normal lives, completely unaware that, as it puts it, this sort of thing exists, referring to that electronic harassment and gang stalking.
Exactly. And the material stresses that it's vital to be informed about this, even if it's not happening to you personally, because it's framed as a system built to, and this is a direct quote, prevent the massive damage that can happen.
Prevented by understanding it, presumably.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. It's described as specifically designed to, quote, take out all your finances, make you dry and empty, and have no money, have no way of supporting yourself, which really suggests a deliberate kind of strategic financial attack.
That's a really powerful and, frankly, disturbing claim from the source. I mean, implying a systematic stripping away of someone's independence like that.
It is.
And it also describes something else, a common trick. It says perpetrators play, trying to get the victim to move, constantly shifting apartments, even changing states or provinces. That, coupled with the financial drain, it sounds incredibly destabilizing.
Yeah, really unsettling. And a particularly striking bit in this material is its take on seeking help. It claims that when you try to get medical assistance, it's, quote, probably just going to be a misdiagnosis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, leading you to spend a lot of money for nothing. Doctors, it says, might tell you there's no problem or just give a wrong diagnosis. The whole situation, as it's described, is very unfair because, again, quoting, you only gain experience by going through the thing.
So experience is the only teacher,
Yeah.
according to this source.
That's the strong suggestion. It says only once you get in the hole and you find there's actually no way out, do things start to make sense. And what's crucial here, it highlights that a lot of the damage is completely irreversible.
Irreversible.
Yeah. Once you've lost your job, money, friends. It says it's nearly impossible to get all of those things back. The perpetrators, according to the source, control the pace. First, they cut off friends and support systems, isolating you. Then they move you to the next phase, only when you basically can't get any outside support.
Okay, so this state of blissful ignorance, as the source calls it, doesn't last. It soon leads, according to this material, into what it labels the first active level, the newbie.
Right, the newbie.
This is someone who's just, quote, signed up to this gang stalking program as a victim, but they're completely unaware. Because, again, the perpetrators are controlling the pace. They're not playing all their cards immediately. It's fascinating how the source describes this initial unawareness as a deliberate tactic, like giving the perpetrators a head start.
Indeed. And the document goes on to detail a significant period of what it calls pre-study, where, as it describes it, perpetrators meticulously watch a victim's actions, their routines. You're just living life normally, but they're supposedly checking you out, and you're totally unaware.
Surveillance before action.
Exactly. The worst case for a newbie, the source says, is running around for years without knowing what's going on, or even worse, believing misinformation that says this doesn't exist, or maybe the technology isn't there yet. What's insightful here is how the source really emphasizes this long period of undetected watching before anything active seems to happen.
Okay. Then, perhaps within months,
Yeah.
you move to the next level. Level 2. This is where strange events start happening, maybe at work, around the house, or even, quote, a lot of madness whenever you're in public.
Goodness.
That's the word it uses, yeah.
Yeah.
It says it's hard to put a name to it initially. You know something's weird, but you can't quite categorize it. So the subtle stuff becomes, well, overtly unsettling here.
Right. And at this stage, level 2, the source really hammers home the urgency for someone to get the knowledge quicker. The big focus is on avoiding financial loss. Specifically, avoiding cash, avoiding losing as much money as possible.
Ah, back to the money.
Back to the money. Money is presented as the key here because once you're broke, it's very, very difficult. It stresses trying to hold on to the job as much as possible because the trick that they play, according to the source, is that your job is your means of making money, and they know very well they're going to make it impossible for you to get the next job.
Wow.
It paints a picture where financial vulnerability isn't just a side effect, it's like a central goal of the whole thing.
It's quite a claim. So after months and months of all of these crazy events, you then move into level 3, getting the first knowledge.
Okay.
This is when you begin to know the terminology, things like gang stalking. The source notes that initially this information might be very hard to digest. It doesn't seem believable or logical, and it's hard to figure out the motive behind it all. This really sounds like a critical turning point in how the individual understands what's happening, moving from just confusion to actually, like, conceptualizing it.
Right. But after some experience, the source explains, you would soon find out that those people are actually getting paid. It's all a money-making scheme. It's just another way of making profits.
A money-making scheme. That's the motive presented.
That's what the source claims is the underlying motive. And it says the biggest mistake at this level, level 3, is to be in denial or disbelief, or to just remain in this phase for too long. This is also where the source highlights the prevalence of misinformation info, deliberately made to keep you in the dark and as uninformed as possible. That's, quote, the whole game of misinformation. What's really insightful here, I think, isn't just what the source says about these levels, but how it frames knowledge. It implies that real understanding is almost exclusively gained through, well, painful personal experience. It pretty much dismisses outside perspectives.
Yeah, that experiential aspect seems key. Fortunately, the source says many victims do progress to level 4. This happens after so many experiences that it becomes, quote, very difficult to still lie to the guy and say, look, you're crazy or whatever.
Okay, so denial becomes impossible.
Seems like it. This is the stage of understanding of the full picture. Comprehending that, in its words, electronic harassment and gang stalking, organized stalking, it's all a system. You understand almost the A to Z. It sounds like a moment of full, undeniable realization for the individual, according to this source anyway.
Okay. However, even at this level, level 4, some apparently still believe that the situation can be reversed, or that they can somehow lead a normal life. The source points out there's still a lot of misinformation out there suggesting solutions like a microchip, or it's a nano implant, or it's an RFID chip that gets implanted into your body and then you can go to surgery.
Right, I've heard those kinds of theories mentioned in relation to this topic.
Yeah, and the source claims people pay lots of money to remove it, but that it's probably not the case. Similarly, others might believe they can lodge a lawsuit or create a case and actually think that they can win. The material skepticism towards, conventional fixes and outside help is a really consistent thread here.
It really is. And finally, we reach level 5, the experience stage. This typically happens after many years or many months of seeing the routine and suffering.
Many years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The source even mentions something quite dark, that some normal, good-hearted people victims are sort of tempted to become perpetrators, often offered better deals to join the other side, though life is still described as very unpleasant even then. That's a really disturbing claim from the source, suggesting this almost inevitable pressure towards a difficult choice.
That is disturbing. So, as a level 5 individual, someone very experienced, the source posits that the goal should be to make it quicker for the next victim to know what's going on.
Help the next person, basically.
Exactly. It estimates most victims spend a minimum of 2 to 3 years losing cash, losing friends, running around in circles, and not knowing what it is that's going on. The simple trick there, according to the source, is just to sit still and know that this is all of the events are orchestrated, all the events are sort of artificial and made. This really speaks to the source's core message that gaining understanding, that knowledge, is the ultimate form of resistance.
Sit still and understand. And the source adds that a lot of these so-called victims are actually good working people with lots of skills, people who are very intelligent, people who are, they're not criminals, they're educated.
Mm-hmm.
It asks you to imagine if all of us would have to come together and move on to the next generation, not just sobbing and feeling sorry for ourselves, but strategically coming up with ideas of trying to make this whole thing stop.
So, a call for collective, strategic action based on shared experience. The ultimate goal for anyone at level 5, the source concludes, really should be to make this thing stop as quickly as possible.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've journeyed through a pretty detailed narrative here, understanding how your source maps out this progression from, well, blissful unawareness right through to a deep-seated comprehension of what it defines as an orchestrated money-making scheme, with profound financial, social, and psychological impacts described. It's definitely a very particular lens through which to view these kinds of experiences.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the source really emphasizes the experiential nature of this understanding. It suggests that knowledge is only truly gained by living through these events it describes.
Right, that personal experience element again.
Exactly. And it also cautions against common pitfalls like denial or believing what it calls deliberate misinformation. And it discusses those common misconceptions about remedies like surgery or lawsuits, consistently pushing back against, conventional solutions.
We really hope this deep dive into your source material has offered you a clearer, more structured understanding of what is, undeniably, a complex and often bewildering narrative. It's about quickly getting to the heart of what the material itself means for someone experiencing these described phases, providing that shortcut to knowledge, as it were.
Mm-hmm. And the source ends with a really powerful call to action, specifically for those it puts at the experience level, level 5, suggesting their goal should be to speed up the understanding for future victims, saving them years of described suffering and loss.
Yeah.
It also posits that many victims, as it calls them, are intelligent, skilled, educated people who, if they united, could potentially make this whole thing start. Which I think raises an important final question for you. How might the act of sharing knowledge, even within a challenging and, let's face it, unconventional framework like the one we've explored today from this source, how might that act empower individuals or shift their approach to experiences that feel otherwise overwhelming?